In Guatemala, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal will announce the results of the general elections 2 weeks after the voting days. In Russia, authorities warned that it will be forced to take appropriate measures against the use of cluster bombs by the Ukrainian regime. In Palestine, President Mahmoud Abbas visited the occupied West Bank city of Jenin following the attacks perpetrated by the Israeli army. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. The Guatemalan Supreme Electoral Tribunal will announce the results of the general elections. The authorities add that they are working to ensure that the runoff elections does not suffer any setbacks. After the completing the pending administrative processes, the electoral authorities will officially announce the results 2 weeks after the Guatemalan people went to the polls. The magistrates of the plenary met to work with their advisor team in the revision of the files that reflects the data of who will be assigned the more than 3,000 elected positions. On Tuesday, the 13 public officials held hostage since Monday by protesters in Chilpancingo, capital of the southern Mexican state of Guerrero, were released. Following a meeting with state authorities, demonstrators released 5 members of the National Guard, 5 members of the state police, 2 the state government officials, and 1 member of the federal state government. Protesters reached an agreement with the government, including public works, with the works plan for their communities and guarantees for public transportation. In addition, the demonstrators also unblocked El Sol Highway, one of the most important in the country as it connects Mexico with the city of Acapulco. In El Salvador, Parliament extended for the 16th time the exception regime for the fight against crime. Opposition lawmakers said measures goes against the people's human rights. The decree establishes the extension of the regime for 1 more month throughout the national territory, and it was approved with 67 votes in favor. The regime was first implemented in March 2022, aims extensions and complaints by human rights organizations regarding the state of exception, which allows detention without a judicial order. The Cuban National Assembly of People's Powers strongly rejected the resolution approved by the plenary session of the European Parliament, which called for sanctions against officials from the Caribbean island, including President Miguel Díaz-Canel. In a statement, the National Assembly assured that the European Parliament lacks the moral, political, and legal authority to judge Cuba. The body added that the text, besides showing a high degree of interventionism, also defends the Cuban reality. In Cuba, the pre-CAF transporting ship of the Russian Navy arrived at the port of Havana with a crew of hundreds of cadets as evidence of the close ties between Ireland and Moscow. The Russian vessel, commanded by Captain Sergei Sarushenko, with a length of 138 meters and a maximum speed of 20 tons, is expected to remain in the Caribbean nation until Friday, July 14th. Moscow Ambassador in Havana, Victor Coronelli, attended the welcoming ceremony led by the second chief of the Cuban Revolutionary Navy, Flotilla Captain Jose Luis Soto. The vessel visited to Havana takes place at a time when the relations between the two countries are strengthening. And in the U.S., the search for a hidden burial ground near the former Guatemalan Indian Industrial School in Nebraska gained renewed interest after hundreds of children's remains were discovered at other Native Americans boarding school sites across the countries and Canada in the last years. The excavation in Jenin began on Monday and is expected to last all week. According to Dave Williams, the state archaeologist whose team is excavating at the site, they have yet to uncover any human remains. The schools was part of a national system more than 100 Native Americans in schools attempting to assimilate Native America into the culture, separating children from their families, isolating them from their heritage, and inflicting physical and emotional abuse. And now in Uruguay, aim at severe drought, authorities are striving to guarantee a fresh water supply to Montevideo, to the country's capital. For the past 2 months, the salt content in tap water in Montevideo has been proved normal, so there is a tremendous sense of urgency in the work being done. The government is making progress in laying 13.3 kilometers of pipelines to transfer waters from the San Jose River to the Santa Lucia River, which has been the only source of water to the 1.8 million inhabitants of the Uruguayan capital, and it's surrounding since the 18th century. As state-owned companies building a dam and pumping stations on the San Jose River to alleviate the water shortage has affected the river over the 3 years.
It is not that we are adding salty water to the mix. We are taking water from the Santa Lucia River as usual. What happens is that the freshwater inputs to the Santa Lucia River have decreased. They are scarce, and now the major input is salt water from the Rio de la Plata, where water is brackish because it is mixed with ocean water. Aguas Corrientes water treatment plant is receiving less fresh water than before because it has not rained. So, neither the Paso Severino nor the Canelon Grande reservoir have been filled. Now, we no longer have Canelon Grande because it is empty, and in Paso Severino, the reserves are getting smaller and smaller.
In this context, Uruguayan residents recount their difficult experiences as drought affects their daily routines and households' economy.
We have had problems with little water supply before. This little water supply, the thing is, heaters are rendered useless. They break because of the high salt content in the water. This one, for instance, is already broken. This, of course, brings extra expenses. I am buying 20-liter jerry cans, which cost 300 pesos, or around $8, and I have to buy 2 per week.
Let's take a very short break, but remember you can now follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English. There you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said he looked forward to the day the alliance will meet with Ukraine as an ally. Reiterated Kiev membership will be confirmed when conditions are met. Stoltenberg spoke at a press conference with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at talks in Lithuanian capital before leaders met to launch a symbolic new forum for ties with Ukraine. In this regard, the NATO Secretary General said Kiev is now closer than ever to the military alliance.
It's now closer to NATO than ever before. Allies reaffirmed that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance and agreed to remove the requirement for a membership action plan. This will change Ukraine's membership path from a two-step process to a one-step process. And we will issue an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO when allies agree that conditions are met.
On Wednesday in Lithuania, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said his nation will not be able to ratify Sweden's NATO bid until last October because Parliament is not in session.
We have a 2-month parliamentary holiday, of course. It is not possible to come out of this holiday in October, as there are many international conventions and legislative proposals that need to be discussed. According to their priority, this will be listed, and this step we have taken will also take its place among these. Our goal is to finish this process as soon as possible.
On Wednesday, China condemned a NATO statement that portrays the Asian Jenin as a major challenge to the interests and security of the military alliance. Beijing rejected NATO's malicious defamation and ideological bias against China and its east-west expansion in the Asia-Pacific region, which risks creating a bloc-to-bloc confrontation and even a new Cold War.
The relevant content in the NATO summit communique confuses right and wrong, distorts the truth, and is ridden with Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice. China firmly opposed this. It has been more than 30 years since the end of the Cold War, but NATO, as a product of the Cold War, still holds onto a zero-sum game and confrontational mindset. It turns a blind eye to the call of the international community for peace, development, and win-win cooperation. It has been going against the trend of times and the course of history, which is unpopular and is doomed to failure.
On Wednesday, Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov warned that the possible use of cultural munitions by the Kiev regime will force Russia to act in response. The Kremlin spokesman reiterated that the use of such weapons might be perceived as a game changer and will certainly force Russia to take specific measures in response. Earlier, the emergency services in the Zaporizhzhia region reported that Ukrainian troops have shelled the town of Tokmak with cultural munitions. In the same way, Syria condemned the United States' decision to supply cluster bombs in Ukraine. According to the Syria's foreign ministry, the continuing weapons supplied to Ukraine by the U.S. and some of its West allies to increase death and destruction is immoral. Jake Sullivan, U.S. National Security Advisor, said last Friday that his country had decided to send cluster munitions to Ukraine as part of a new military aid package. On Wednesday, following 2 weeks of relative calm, Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti said that the number of special police officers stationed outside 4 municipal buildings in ethnic Serb majority areas will be reduced by a quarter. The Premier also announced that new mayoral elections will be held in each of the towns in a move to diffuse tensions with neighboring Serbia, which were sparking a new maid. Ethnic Serbs in northern Kosovo boycotted mayoral elections in the 4 municipalities in April as part of a campaign for greater autonomy, and they now object to the ethnic Albanian mayor chosen in the polls. On Wednesday, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres launched the World Debt Report, where he said the half of the world is sinking into a development disaster fulfilled by a crushing debt crisis.
Some 3.3 billion people, almost half of humanity, live in countries that spend more on debt interest payments than on education or health. And yet, Because most of these unsustainable debts are concentrated in poor countries, they are not judged to pose a systemic risk to the global financial system. This is a mirage. 3.3 billion people is more than a systemic risk. It's a systemic failure. Deep reforms to the global financial system will not happen overnight, but there are many steps we can take right now. Our proposals include an effective debt workout mechanism that supports payment suspensions, longer lending terms, and lower rates, including for vulnerable middle-income countries.
Take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to watch our new reviews of stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas arrived in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin following the attack perpetrated days ago by the Israeli army. The Palestinian president visited Jenin to assess the conditions of the citizens and the progress of the reconstruction work in the refugee camp and the city. Several Palestinian officials, including the Prime Minister Mohammed Sayed, greeted the president upon his arrival. Israeli armed forces stormed into the Jenin refugee camp on July the 3rd and the 4th, killing 12 Palestinians, injuring more than 100, and devastating homes and infrastructure. In this context, Jenin refugee camp residents have made progress in recent days in rebuilding their homes following the Israeli attacks that were described as the worst in the area in 20 years. Jenin is located in the north of the occupied West Bank, 75 kilometers from Jerusalem, while its camp was established in 1953 in the southwest corner of the country.
We lost our livestock shelters, a tractor and 2 cars, and 3 tons of feed for livestock was burned. I'm not scared because I've been used to it.
My daughter has bought many gifts and kept them in small cases. I don't know what kind of rockets or bombs they had used in the attacks. Why did it happen? There is no armed personnel here.
On Wednesday, Kenyan President William Ruto welcomed his Iranian counterpart Ibrahim Raisi, who began a tour that will take him to several nations in the African continent in order to deepen bilateral ties of cooperation. Raisi was officially received by his counterpart at the presidential palace in Nairobi, Kenya's capital. In a statement, the Iranian Foreign Ministry said that the objectives of the president's regional tour are to promote economic diplomacy, strengthening political relations with friendly and allied countries, and diversify the Islamic Republic of Iran exports destinations. After concluding his stay in Kenya, the Iranian president is scheduled to make official visit to Uganda and Zimbabwe, where he will sign several cooperation agreements in different files. Also in Nairobi, demonstrations against the rising cost of living left one dead in clashes between the forces of law and order and protesters. Human rights defenders said police cracked down on protesters, while police reporters said the members of the mobilization set fire to tears and threw stones at officers. Despite the fact that the Constitution of Kenya includes the right of demonstrate peacefully, any demonstrations request a prior notification in the interest of the national security.
The cost of living has increased and life is becoming unbearable. Our children are not going to school. We are not able to afford food. Now we cannot go to work due to the protests. We do not have options. We do not know what we will do with the current government.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also see us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. teleSUR English, and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.